Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast. So, through the weeks of poetry, my group and I decided to target one important conflict in our modern day: bullying. Each one of us chose a relatable subtopic to explore and write about. For instance, I chose animal abuse. For the first challenge, Finding the Funny, I chose the poem A Crime Scene by Albert van Hoogmo to explore and mimic. Inspired when his 5th grade twins needed to read a poem and he really didn't like what they were assigned, Alabamian writer Albert van Hoogmo wrote a poem for them, and that's how his journey with poetry began. And one of his famous poems is A Crime Scene. There has been a murder, a woman was killed, found in a bathtub partially filled. A pair of policemen went into the house and questioned the poor woman's spouse. He'd just come home from working all night and found her like that, a terrible sight. The younger policeman looked on with dismay. He'd never forget that terrible day. He saw the young woman from behind the door and empty milk cartons all over the floor, scattered strawberries, slices of fruit, and spoonfuls of sugar and honey to boot. Who could have done this terrible thing? His voice had a horrified, pitiful ring. Just look at the clues, replied Sergeant Miller. It looks like the work of a serial killer. Van Hoogmo used a couplet form to write this humorous narrative, which describes a common real-life crisis situation. A woman is found dead in a partially filled bathtub, surrounded by empty cartons of milk, with fruit scattered all around. When the policemen arrive, they question her poor husband, but he has no idea how that crime happened. The clues throughout the poem indicate that the poem took place at night at the woman's house, and the tone of the speaker remains serious throughout the entire poem until the twist created by the last stanza's clever wordplay. The poet creates a pun on the term serial killer by having the policeman say a serial killer, in reference to all the breakfast items scattered around the victim and the crime scene. So, in response to the poetry analysis, I have mimicked Van Hoogmo's poem by using the copy change method. I mimicked the same poetry form, line pattern, and writing style. My poem also includes imagery, and both poems describe important conflicts or crises that humanity has to deal with in the modern age. Violence against the disempowered. So, in response, I wrote a scene of abuse. There has been abandonment and then blatant lies fed. She denied the dog was hers or neglected, practically left for dead. You see, a pair of rescuers had heard the poor little loner, and then they'd questioned the dog's dishonorable owner. She said she had just come home from partying all night, and found it begging at her door, a terrible sight. The younger rescuer looked on with dismay. Lady claimed the dog wasn't hers, just got there that day. They'd seen the starving dog from behind the door, with nothing for comfort but the cold, hard floor. Empty food bowl, no water. He drank from the drain, the little pup whining his woe and his pain. How could she have done this terrible thing? Asked his eyes and his wine with a pitiful ring. You're going to take him then? The woman presumed, after the fortune I spent having him colored and groomed. My poem explores the irresponsible behavior of a person who assumes the responsibility of adopting an animal, but unable to fulfill the obligation to care for it, and ends up abusing it through neglect. Pets are disempowered in the sense that they are completely dependent on their owners for food, shelter, and care. And it's easy to see how this dependency can be abused through violence, tormenting, or bullying the animal for the owners or others' dark amusement, neglect, or withholding food. My anonymous speaker explains how the owner almost makes her crime worse by denying her responsibility. Although I was unable to recreate Hoogmo's clever wordplay, I have added a surprise twist in the owner's reveal at the end. In the last line, despite claiming to have only gotten the dog that very day, she reveals that she had already spent a fortune having him groomed. Our group theme is bullying, and a lot of people are unconscious to the fact that violence, harassment, taunting, and withholding care are common forms of bullying against the disempowered. Doing it to an animal is the same kind of cruelty as doing it to any other disempowered being, like a child, the mentally disabled, or the very old. They too have no voices to be heard. For the second challenge, Why Do Emos Write Poetry?, I chose the poem I Heard Music by Conrad Aiken to mimic. Music I heard with you was more than music, and bread I broke with you was more than bread. Now that I'm without you, all is desolate. All that was once so beautiful is dead. Your hands once touched this table and this silver, and I have seen your fingers hold this glass. Things, these things do not remember you, beloved, and yet your touch upon them will not pass. For it was in my heart you moved among them, and blessed them with your hands and with your eyes, and in my heart they will always remember. They knew you once, O beautiful and wise. The poem may not be speaking to a lover in the traditional sense at all. As written in poets.org, Aiken's childhood was marked by that tragedy of his father's doing, where his father killed his mother and committed suicide after. Things were never the same for him after that, and the chaos marked him emotionally. In response, he wrote the poem I Heard Music to share with us how the loss of someone beloved can be very sad. This might be him grieving for his dear mother, without whom life is empty, like any child without a mother. As written in Aiken in the House, the beginning of the two lines have a repeated syntax with just a switch of subjects. There is also a bit of allusion to the Christ in this poem, starting with the second line, and bread I broke with you was more than bread, an action of sharing body of Christ, a sense of unity. The theme of this poem is living life in the present without the speaker's loved one. Without his loved one, everything around him has lost its importance, all except the memories he has of her with simple objects. The title I Heard Music is written in the past tense form. Hence, the speaker is talking about how everything beautiful happened before she died, and now in the present, only her memories live on. So in response, I wrote the poem O Angel and Monster. Tricks you have taught me were more than tricks, and the words I gave to you were more than words. Now that I'm alone without your love, all is bleak. All that was shared, a river of blindness blurred. Your hands once touched my soft feathers and this beak, and I have seen your eyes capture the essence of my wings. These reminders must escape me, precious. And yet, my memory betrays my reminiscence. For it was in my heart you played among them, and betrayed them with your rage against this songster. And in my heart they will remember always, they knew you once, O angel and monster. Both poems describe how the loss of a beloved one can still be affecting their daily life. My poem explores the irresponsible behavior of a person who assumes the responsibility of adopting an animal but ends up abusing it by subsequently abandoning it outside. Animals are disempowered, and people take this as an advantage for abusing, neglecting, and bullying them, knowing they have no voice to be heard. Pets depend on their owners for food, care, and shelter, and when they suddenly are abandoned to face the harsh reality outside, they end up dead. In my poem, I unpacked the emotions of a parrot who feels lost due to the betrayal of the owners who left it on the streets from where was considered home. Aiken, due to a tragedy, described the loss of a beloved one in his poem. He mentions how the loss of a precious one can still affect his daily life. And I, in response, discussed how the innocence of animals can be when attached to their owners, and how their owner's betrayal keeps affecting their daily life. The parrot kept remembering the good things its owner provided while battling to forget the bad things. The title O Angel and Monster describes how a human can be nice and pure at first, but ends up like a monster and a devil at the end. My message behind this poem is to inform all people around that animals have emotions too, and they can be easily hurt. For the third challenge, You've Been Slammed, I chose the poem Rules and Regulation by Lewis Carroll to mimic. A short direction to avoid dejection, by variations on occupations and prolongation of relaxation, and combinations of recreations and disputation on the state of the nation, in adaptation to your station by invitations to friends and relations, by evitation of amputation, by permutation in conversation and deep reflection, you'll avoid dejection. As written in yourdailypoem.com, Lewis Carroll, a Victorian author, began writing poetry as a child, which he published on homemade newspapers. The poet, despite a stammer, was a popular public speaker. In lines 21 and 22, Learn well your grammar and never stammer, the poet expressed his feelings towards stammer and the way that helped him improve this problem. In Rules and Regulations, the poet used the same AA rhyme scheme throughout the first 20 lines. He stated some rules and regulations that can be relatable to any generation. For example, in the first 2 lines, a short direction to avoid dejection, he describes how some people rather take the short direction, shortcuts in anything just to avoid the sadness or depression that can result after a failure. And in lines 6 and 5, and prolongation of relaxation, he mentioned the people who prolong and procrastinate in everything, just so they can continue to relax and have fun. Inspired by the poem Rules and Regulations by Lewis Carroll, I created the poem What Goes Around Comes Around, not only to target animal abuse, but also to speak for all the disempowered people who are bullied, whether old people, children, or those in need. A shortened life that ends with a knife. By neglect and rejection, there cannot be any objection, like the damnation of Dalmatians requiring a combination of a monstrous creation. It's our obligation, us as a nation, to raise our voices to those without choices, animals, children, or those in need, old, weak, frail, but afraid to bleed. Oh, why? Why? Aren't we all here for a purpose, whether play or in service? Cry, hate, or be nervous. Take care of them. They all belong to you. Instead of using the same rhyme scheme like the poet used in his first 20 lines, I decided to change and use different rhyme schemes, like AABB. The original poem consists of 57 lines, but I chose to mimic only what I thought was important, which were the first 20 lines. My poem is about how cruel humans can be when dealing with other creatures. It may be simply by saying harsh words, which hurt their feelings, or by actual physical harassment. A lot of people enjoy pushing others down, breaking them, and making them feel unimportant, unwanted, or unliked. In this poem, I raised my voice to defend all the people who feel this way in life, to tell them that they still matter no matter how they look. And this was a piece of my mind. Thank you for listening, and feel free to comment down below. Thank you.